What's up, it's Marco, Sage Soccer, and today we talk about some US men's national team players' moves during the winter window. And we have a good amount of players to talk about. Not too many. There weren't too many people turning a good World Cup performance into a big move, but those typically don't work out anyway. See guys like James Rodriguez, Ener Valencia, players like that. So it's probably a good thing. And these moves that did happen seem to have been in the works for a while. A big one is Weston McKennie moving to Leeds, another Leeds player for the USA, Leeds United States. And, with this one, it's kind of a mixed bag because when you look at the move, it seems like a bit of a step down from Weston because you're at Juventus, one of the top clubs in the world, really, one of the best ones in Italy for sure. But when you look at Juventus, they're in a bit of a rough patch, to say the least, at the moment. Um, Obviously, like the points deduction, they're not doing the best either way. And getting out of that situation isn't the worst. And he has been linked with Premier League teams for a while. He's perennially linked with Tottenham, with Conte. I remember seeing him being linked to Burnley, I think Aston Villa. So I think this type of a move has been the worst for a while, and going somewhere where there are Americans there is, kind of typical. The thing about this move is that when you watch Leeds play, it's really been in a 4-2-3-1, and in that 4-2-3-1, Tyler Adams and Mark Roca have been two of the better players for Leeds this year, and I don't think either of them are going to get out of the team. So when you look at that, it's like, oh, well, I guess that Weston's not going to be playing that much. But I think that probably what's going to end up happening is he's probably going to usher in a formation change, switching to more of a 4-3-3 formation, which would mean that Brandon Aaronson's going to have a lot of a tougher time to get on the field, especially with Ganonto playing very well recently. Rodrigo's been in form at striker. Patrick Bamford could still hit form. Like, there's basically only one wing spot for him to play, which isn't his natural position anyway. And he's got to compete with guys like Jack Harrison, Luis Sinistera, then their younger players like a Gelhardt or a Greenwood, and it's going to be a lot tougher for Aaronson. They do rotate a lot, and I do believe he'll still get on the field basically every game. But not the best situation there for Brendan. But so something to keep in mind there. And with this move, I'm not too high on it. Like I would have liked for him to stay at a really good club, but Juventus aren't in the greatest situation right now. So we'll give it a shot, see how he does. And hey, Leeds continues to be a huge club for most American fans. So yeah. Then we have a player who we're finally seeing a little bit more of. John Brooks is moving to Hoffenheim. He went to Benfica in a move that seemed a bit weird at the time. I know Mallorca was in for him. We'll get to another former Mallorca player later. And, it kind of seemed like last minute. Then he went there and really didn't play at all. He's behind Silva, who's just a Portuguese wonder kid, and Otamendi, who was a starter at the World Cup, or the World Cup winning team, Argentina. So it makes sense that he wasn't really playing, but I think that he wasn't showing well in training at all, or just wasn't working out there. So Brooks ended up moving to Hoffenheim. It wasn't even a transfer. He was just released by Benfica, went to Hoffenheim on a free, and he's already starting. He's in the lineup today. We'll have to see how that game goes. He'll know by the time this is up. And he started already, and that was in a 4-0 loss. But it's good to see him on the field again. And if he can turn this playing time into good form and really start to get going again with Berhalter out of the picture, he could easily be back with the national team. And it's something I would kind of like to see because when you look at the team, you have Chris Richards and my Palace. I really want him to be a starter. Cameron Carter Vickers has been playing very well. Then we have Tim Ream, who's been very good in the Premier League. But it's reasonable to expect Ream to fall off, due to age in the future, and maybe we don't see Carter Vickers or Richards take that next step, or maybe they lose playing time. We have a lot of injury issues. So to have another really good center back in the fold would be very good for us. And if he keeps playing every game, I'd personally bring him into that March camp because he seems to be a really good player to have in the squad. So it's really good to see John Brooks getting some playing time. Next is Matthew Hoppe moving to Hibs on loan from Middlesbrough. This is a loan move, not a permanent transfer. And on top of that, this move seems to be a bit of an emergency loan. Because when you look at Hibs' team, they have a pretty good striker in Kevin Nesbitt, a Scotland international who just picked up an injury and before that had been linked with a move away. and it seems like Hoppe was a bit of a last-minute replacement to fill in the gap for him. So maybe that's a sign, at least in the short term, that he will have a lot of playing time. Though I will say that they have a couple of pretty good players. Let me get the name right. Yuan is a midfielder, or he's been playing a bit of a wing. He can also play striker for them. Then you have, if he does want to play a wing, you have to compete with a guy like McGeady, who he's still playing. He had a long spell at Sunderland after being probably the top Irish player for a small period, maybe him or Robbie Keane. And also a Harry McCurdy, who just following like the lower leagues of England, he's a pretty talented player. He seems to have a bit of attitude issues, but seems like a good player. Honestly, kind of similar to Matthew Hoppe if you think about it a little bit. So, the question is, will he get consistent playing time? And maybe in the short term, but you have to get into that team before Nesbitt returns from injury, which that injury I looked, it seems still kind of inconclusive. Seems like a hamstring, which if it's a tear, you might be out for the season. If it's a something small like a pull, he probably only has 2 weeks to get into the team, and it's he's going to have to step up because Hoppe he's hasn't played really for like 2 years now, and at this point, if you want to stay like a relevant player for this U.S. men's national team, he has to start showing something again now, and this is a chance for him to step up, but he really has to take it. Then some other moves that were basically known before the window even started, but want to talk about them anyway. Djordje Mihailovic moving to AZ, maybe it's AZ, in the Netherlands, and it seems to be working out very well. He recently had a very just fun game against Taylor Booth's Utrecht, which was a 5-5 draw, got himself some assists in that one, and he seems to be taking the Netherlands very well, which is good. It is a step up from the MLS, and probably overall quality as well as just the speed of play, the style really works better for more technical guys, helps them develop. And I'm definitely be interested to see him get called into the national team. He probably deserved to back when, at least in like some MLS camps. I think people are more mad that guys like Roldan and Leggett were getting called in ahead of him. I I'm not joking. I think because he was playing in Montreal, he wasn't seen as a real MLS guy, so he never really got those chances. So now I think he probably deserves to get a look in March. And it's going to be tough to break to the team. We've got a lot of really talented midfielders, so it's going to be tough. But I think he's shown a lot of talent. Him and Taylor Booth as well, both of them who are playing in that game, should be getting a chance with the national team moving forward. And then some other moves that just didn't end up happening. I want to mention real quick. Conrad de la Fuente, he had a loan to Hull set up. It didn't end up going through. Then you had guys like Haji Wright. He was linked to my Crystal Palace, a couple other moves in the Premier League. That didn't end up happening. I think the domestic window in Turkey is still open, so he could move to like a Galatasaray, but he's not going to be moving abroad this year. And then you had some like small news for like a Jedi Robson, George Bello. That didn't end up happening. And I think these are mostly like the relevant transfers that are happening, and not counting like moves in between MLS. I think Sean Johnson signed with Toronto, and we'll see Alan Senora pretty soon as well. But yeah, it's really it for those moves. Then a couple of U20 guys I want to get into real quick. Paxten Aaronson moved on from my Union to Eintracht Frankfurt in Germany, and this is a move I'm not too sure about. I mean, the positives that a club spent a lot of money for him. They obviously have a plan for Paxten, so that's a good sign. But they did release him for Camp Cupcake and allowed him to play in those national team games, which like we like to see that, but they didn't really care about having him around, and that's not a great sign. And he wasn't even playing that much at the Union, so we'll have to see if he's really ready for this move. I could very easily see him like getting loaned out or ending up playing in like one of the youth leagues, similar to what's been happening with Justin Shea, though he has recently been playing with the first team a lot more. So like there's definitely like a lot of potential for this move to go very well. And like I could see maybe like a Kamada moving on this summer and Aaronson being able to maybe not replace him, but get a lot of a playing time that he would have. Frankfurt might be able to reach a Conference League, Champions League, and they could have like a lot of playing time open for him. So there's definitely a very good chance this move goes well, but it's something that there are doubts in my mind. And speaking of a very similar move for Gabriel Slonina moving to Chelsea, and I've talked about this a lot, but it's tough to say how this will work out because, well, Chelsea, they've been spending a ton of money recently. I don't think they're going to be waiting for an 18-year-old goalkeeper to develop. They just had to spend money on one American. Like, I was just thinking, like, it had to happen, and he's obviously going to be behind Kepa and Mendy. Seems like Kepa's going to be the starter right now, so you'd expect, or if Mendy can take it back, one of them is going to be moving on, you'd have to think. So the backup spot could be open, but then even then, it's like, is he going to get ahead of like a guy like a Teddy Sherman Lowe, who's a very promising England youth keeper, and aside from that, they could just bring in a veteran. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a John Ruddy end up at Chelsea as like a third choice goalkeeper. Clubs like Man City have been doing that with like Scott Carson. You've seen like Man United pick up like a Lee Grant, a Tom Heaton. I'm not really sure if Slonina will even get a chance as the backup. I think this preseason coming soon will be pretty telling. If they go on like a tour of the U.S. and they give him some minutes, that would definitely be a really good sign. If he plays at all with the first team in the preseason, like that could be big. Like aside from his chances at Chelsea, I should say, if he's there and he ends up as part of a loan army, that's not the end of the world. Like we've seen a guy like a Christensen develop very well in that system. And while it has hurt a lot of players, like just being a goalkeeper getting consistent playing time anywhere at that age will be huge. So we'll have to see how things end up working out for Slonina at Chelsea. I mean, everybody knows the positives. Being the goalkeeper of one of the biggest clubs in the world is like insane, and it is possible. But with how much they've been spending recently, you it's hard to imagine them waiting for him to develop. So we'll have to see how he ends up doing on loan or as a backup keeper. And it's really hard to say how it'll be going right now, but that move could definitely end up working out. And yes, all I've talked about with the transfers, there might be a couple more that end up happening pretty soon, like a Wright moving around. I mentioned Senora. We had a couple more youth players moving around. That'll probably happen, but just for the main guys who I could really expect in the squad, I think I talked about all of them, and it could really help out the team. And especially, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Brooks back in the Bundesliga, McKennie at Leeds in the Premier League. Hoppe, will he get some playing time? How the young guys do? Mihailovic in Europe now, and yes, all I've talked about. See you.